I just wanted to make a brief video in response to some claims by prominent Christian apologists and polemicists online that the early Jewish Christian sects, the Ebionites as they're called, did not believe in the virgin birth. Now, why does this matter? Because the earliest Christians were Jewish Christians, and they had beliefs about Jesus and about the Jewish law and so on, which are quite different from later Christian orthodoxy, certainly different from Paul's ideas, which became dominant in the second century onwards up to today. And the accusation is that the Ebionites, as they're called, these Jewish Christians, did not believe in the virgin birth. So their faith was suspect. They were heretics anyway. So why are we putting so much store by what they believe? They didn't quite get their beliefs right. Now, this is a half-truth at best, and I want to show why this is a half-truth by referring to the well-known book by Eusebius, The History of the Church. Who is Eusebius? On the back cover it says, Eusebius's account is the only surviving historical account of the church during its crucial first 300 years. Bishop Eusebius, who was born in AD 260, so it's really early, a learned scholar who lived most of his life in Caesarea in Palestine, broke new ground in writing the history and provided a model for all later ecclesiastical historians, church historians. So this book, by the way, is edited by Andrew Luth, who's a professor of patristic studies at the University of Durham. And at the very back, he has a glossary, the who's who of Eusebius, and he helpfully tells us about the Ebionites. The word is derived from a Hebrew word meaning the poor. This may indicate that the original Ebionites were materially poor, or that they thought of themselves as the poor ones, who depend utterly on the grace of God. And then he goes on, they seem to have been Jewish Christians who respected Christ but could not conceive of his relationship to God as anything other than that of a man inspired by God, like one of the prophets. Eusebius is scornful of Jewish Christianity. This is the original faith of the disciples, by the way, and knows little about it anyway, obviously. It seems to have been much more important in the early centuries of Christianity than appears from the history of the church. End quote. Now, we know this from much scholarship in the last 40, 50 years, that the original disciples and followers of those people, like James, the brother of Jesus, were Jewish Christians who believed very different things than Paul believed in the emerging great church in the second century, the Catholic Church and evangelicals today. So the point is, why does this matter, what they believed about the virgin birth? Because if it can be shown they didn't believe in the virgin birth, that discredits them in the eyes of many people. Look, Muslims believe he was born of a virgin. The Gospels say he was born of a virgin. These people were just heretics. Why should we take what they say seriously? So this is, I think, the agenda behind some very well-known Christian apologists who I will not name because I don't want to get into a tit-for-tat ad hominem with people. So what does Eusebius tell us? Well, he tells us something very interesting. And on page 90 of this book, this is the third chapter of Eusebius. He writes this: there are two Ebionite sects. The first one says they regard him, Jesus, as plain and ordinary, a man esteemed as righteous through growth of character and nothing more, the child of a normal union between a man and Mary, and they held that they must observe every detail of the law. So these are Jews basically who believe in Jesus as the Messiah, as the prophet, but they believe that he was not born of a virgin. And then Eusebius goes on. A second group went by the same name, Ebionites, but escaped the outrageous absurdity of the first. They did not deny that the Lord was born of a virgin and the Holy Spirit, but nevertheless shared their refusal to acknowledge his pre-existence as God the Word and wisdom. Thus the impious doctrine of the others was their undoing also, especially as they placed equal emphasis on the outward observance of the law. They held that the epistles of the apostle, that means Paul, of course, ought to be rejected altogether, calling him a renegade from the law. And using only the gospel of the Hebrews, they treated the rest with scant respect. Like the others, they observed the Sabbath and the whole Jewish system. So he is very scathing of these people, but of course they represent the original faith of the disciples, who were Torah observant Jews. We can see this in the book of Acts. It states they were. And we can see also that this second group of the Ebionites believed in the virgin birth. So there seemed to be split between them, and I'm not sure how they split, and did they commingle, or were they separate denominations? But clearly there was a group of Ebionites who did believe in the virgin birth, who were Jewish Christians, and some who didn't believe in the virgin birth. So this story that the Ebionites didn't believe in the Virgin Mary and the virgin birth is wrong. It's a half-truth. Some were quite orthodox by Islamic standards, shall we say, that they believed that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary without any involvement of Joseph, but also they observed the law. They viewed Jesus as just a man, a great prophet of God, a Messiah, which of course is exactly what the Quran teaches as well. So that's an amazing coincidence, you may say. So I just wanted to just touch on this point, because it's used against to discredit the Jewish Christians, this whole thing of the virgin birth, and it's a distortion of the facts. And I just wanted to get that on record for what it's worth. Till next time.